Hi, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to everybody in the world who's listening to this. I wanted to discuss an issue that most Zambians try to avoid for obvious reasons, and is not really that developed as a social issue within our country because it's very difficult to even find people that can even counter the arguments. It seems as if most Zambians are homogeneously going in one direction, which is, homophobia. Now, I think with this discussion, there are two elements. First and foremost, there is the Western perception of Zambians being homophobic, and then there's just the internal realities of homophobia in Zambia. So I'll try to address the first issue, which is the Western perception. And when I say Western, of course we are talking about countries such as England, the United States, and the general Eurocentric cultures. Um, First and foremost, whenever you have a political idea, you need to understand that it is something that has to be it's something that has to be part of the culture. Most of political ideas that have been imported, they have, so-called unquote imported. But the reason why they have succeeded in areas that they were foreign to is because they fused well with the cultures of those societies and the priorities of the people in those societies. Now, when you look at Western culture and you look at the fundamentals of life, Western culture is very big on individual freedom. Um, in fact, most countries in Western culture have been founded on this perception that human beings are free and the right to pursue liberty on an individual basis. However, in Africa, that's not necessarily true because the individual does not trump the collective rights of a people. So it's very rare that rights or goals that are very individualistic in nature find themselves accommodated within African culture. So I think if the Western world continues to look at Africa within that prism, and in this case Zambia, we'll never really come to an intelligent stage where we can actually come up with the right steps to accommodate the human rights of individuals who happen to be homosexual. Uh, and it shouldn't be like liberal economics, the way liberal economics or capitalism was shoved on African countries, because you are injecting these ideas that don't have a structural backing. And what you do is that, yes, we create policy, we create the laws that protect homosexuals, but we fail to understand the structural implications of those initiatives. Same thing with economics. When we were injecting liberal economics into African economies, we failed to understand the concepts and the structure as well as the cultural attitudes of Africans towards individual liberty. And that's why we really not had success in terms of the development of most of these African countries because we are coming from a Western centric ideology or a tool or a process that has worked in Western culture and shoving into the throats of Africans. No, it's not going to work. And case in point, today is not economics, today it's homosexuality. It's literally, as it is right now, impossible to even get a majority vote, or even not even a majority, even say 5% of a legislative body in Africa to vote for homosexual rights. It's impossible, simply because the language that we've associated with homosexuality are not really part of African culture. Now, that's I think that's an issue that the Western world needs to come to grasp with. They need to try and formulate a plan that's not based on how they view the world, but try to understand why Africans view homosexuality the way they do. Now, the second tier is homosexuality within the internal frame, within the internal societies of African countries, and in this case in Zambia. Homosexuality as an act of two individuals of the same sex engaging in a sexual encounter does exist in Zambia, and anybody who would say otherwise is completely lying to themselves. When you look at our prison systems, men do engage in sexual interactions. In fact, that's one of our biggest problems, because we try to say men do not sleep with other men, and in prison they actually do. So what we do is that we avoid encouraging the use of condoms in prisons, because we do not, it's like giving condoms to your teenage daughter. You don't want that perception that she's already having sex, but the reality is that she is having sex, so you might as well give her the condoms. Now, other than the prison system, there are sexual encounters in Zambia from just understanding Zambian society among men. And you find there was a song made by this gentleman called Danny, where he was explaining that you have foreigners, Western people coming in into Zambia and engaging in sexual activities with young boys. So you have an older guy coming into Zambia, finds a young Zambian boy, and they engage in sexual activity. And he buys the boy things like a car, just the economic disparity issue. Same thing that happens in Thailand also happens in Zambia, sexual tourism for men. So in that regard, it also does exist. Now, what we fail to try to articulate, I think, in Zambia is human rights and framing the idea of individuals who happen to be homosexuals are still entitled to human rights. And human rights would mean, in this case, just because I happen to be engaged in an activity does not mean that the rights that I attain as a human being, simply because I'm a human being, I'm not a dog, I'm not a cow, but the fact that I'm a human being, I'm entitled to those rights. And one of them is the right to life. And as a citizen, moreover, I'm also equally entitled to the state protecting my bodily physical integrity. So I think if we really want to address issues in Zambia that are that divisive and really different people are looking at them, we need to try and frame them in a better language that Africans or Zambians can accommodate. Zambians can say, all right, what are the priorities of our societies? What is the aim of our government for our citizens? And once we structure the language, even with women rights, gender issues, domestic violence, child labor, we need to understand the frameworks of the Zambian culture, how they prioritize certain things over certain things, and try to use that as the premise on which our arguments are based. Because clearly we all establish one thing and one fact: it is wrong for a society to engage in a genocidal killing of individuals simply because of who they are. They might be from a different tribe, they might have a different color, they might have a different sexual orientation, and they might even be a different gender. It is wrong to have a society and the use of state institutions as well as legal frameworks to undermine the virtues and rights of a specific group of people who are, by virtue of birth, citizens of that country. We really need to understand these terms. And once we establish that, and in this case, in the case of Zambia, it's a democratic country. So we need to ask the state, what is the responsibilities? What are your responsibilities to your citizenship, to your citizens? And once we can articulate that, I think we'll be better equipped to really address some of the social problems we find in Zambia that result from cultural issues such as perceptions on sexuality, what women are supposed to do, what men are supposed to do, what children are supposed to do, or even just issues of tribalism. I think we need to approach it more internally. I believe it's more of an endothermic justification as opposed to exothermic. Thank you very much.